Hello, class, and welcome to another one of our fabulous lessons. This is the way our PowerPoints are going to look throughout the semester. And then what you'll hear me do is I will explain the lesson. So that way, hopefully it'll make the assignments that I give you each week make more sense. And again, guide you in understanding what it is that you're going to be asked to do in order to pass the HiSET in the reading comprehension subject test. That includes reading, social studies, science, and writing. So we're going to start right here at the beginning, as we so often do. And the most foundational questions that you can ask yourself when you're thinking about the information you need to know on your high school equivalency test or any standardized test is the answers to the questions who, what, when, where, why, the 5W questions. You may remember them from when you were in school. So our goal for this lesson, we're going to familiarize ourselves with those 5Ws, who, what, when, where, why, okay? We're going to come to understand them as the most basic components of any text that we're going to be asked to read and comprehend. Knowing how the HiSET uses these questions is important. It's also important for you to know that most writers build their stories or articles around the answer to these 5 questions. And if you had to summarize all of the questions that you will be asked on your standardized tests, it would boil down to who, what, when, where, and why. We're going to start this lesson with a Venn diagram. And you may have seen one of these before, maybe in a lesson for this class. Maybe not, maybe you've seen it elsewhere. But if you haven't seen it, a Venn diagram is used to show the reader or information seeker the differences and similarities between two concepts, related concepts. And for us right now, we're looking at the differences and similarities between fiction and nonfiction. And this is important to us here at the very start of the semester because the answers to our who, what, when, where, why questions are different slightly depending on if the text we're being asked about is fiction or nonfiction. So it's important for you to be really sure you understand the difference. But what are the similarities? That's also important, right? And right there in the middle of our Venn diagram where the circles overlap are the similarities between fiction and nonfiction. They have characters, who, right? They are about actions and events. The conflict and the resolution is part of the actions and the events. That's the what. The setting, the where and the when. The purpose and the reason, that's the why. So where they overlap is the answers to our 5 question words. Who, characters, what, actions, events, conflicts, resolutions. When and where is setting. Why is the purpose, the reason. And then another answer to who is often also sometimes the author or the creator of the text or the work that you're being asked about. Pay attention to the two differences, the difference between fiction and nonfiction, right? Notice where you see fiction, notice where you see nonfiction, then pay attention to those similarities. Who? This is an important concept in both fiction and nonfiction because stories and articles are often about someone, a person or a group of people. We as human beings like to read about human beings. So the who answers who is the subject or the person being discussed. And as I mentioned a second ago, it can also be who wrote this. The person or persons within a story are characters. In a fiction story, the main character may be the narrator. It may not be. In nonfiction, the main character might be the person or the company or the thing or whatever it is that is the focus of the article or the text. It can also be who is being impacted by the events being described in the story or in the article. Going back to active reading, our example questions at the bottom of our slide, I point those out to you because using active reading, you can be trying to answer these questions for yourself while you're reading the assignments, which will help you with the answers at the end of the assignments. It'll also begin to develop that skill for you on the test. So what types of questions are who questions? Who is this story or article about? Who was there when this story took place? Who participated? Who is the author writing this story or article for? For instance, if you were given an article about lumber, the lumber industry, who is that for? Probably people interested in the lumber industry. So who is it about people? Now what? Both fiction and nonfiction stories are about something that is happening or that happened in the past or that could happen in the future. What, the question what is used to identify the event or action that happened in the story. How much do we love the question what? What happened today? How was your day? What did you do today? Do you ever get that or ask that question? So the HiSET's going to ask you the same thing. What did you just read? What happened in what you just read? This is known as the plot, the event, or the actions. In a fiction story, the plot involves what is happening or what has happened to the character. The narrator is describing the plot to the reader. In nonfiction, the plot is what is the article about? What is the topic of the article? What is the topic? Right? Active reader alert. Those are some example questions for you to be asking yourself while you're reading in this class. What is the story about? What is the article about? What is currently happening in what I'm reading? What was the most important event or action that happened in what I just read or what I'm reading right now? Look at those questions and be thinking about them. When? Both fiction and nonfiction stories are about something that is happening or that happened or will happen at a certain point in time. When? When did that happen? When is used to identify the time in which the plot takes place. The answer to when is an aspect of setting. The answer to when is often an inference question, which means that the author doesn't explicitly provide the answer for you. You may have to infer when the story takes place. If you're reading a story and everyone's riding horses and there's no electricity and the telephone had just been invented, and this is what you're reading, you can infer that the story took place in the 19th century, in the 1800s. If you're reading another story and human beings are living on Mars and flying around the solar system, you can infer that story is taking place in the future. Authors will not tell you right out, this story takes place in da-da-da time. You have to infer that. Those example questions at the bottom of the slide are good ways for active readers, good questions for active readers to ask to help them infer when is what I'm reading taking place. Where? Both fiction and nonfiction stories provide you with a location for events in the story. Where did that happen? Used to identify where. Where is another aspect of setting. So we have when and we have where, and those together give us setting. Just like with when, where is often not always explicitly told to us, right? The where could be a town, a country, a planet in a fiction story, anywhere where you can imagine it. The author is going to describe the setting rather than often tell it to us, right? Nonfiction, the setting, the where is going to be here on Earth, less fantastical, not made up. Where did the events described by the author take place? That's an example of a guiding question for you to use while you're reading. Why? For both fiction and nonfiction stories, they contain a purpose. Either that purpose is for why the characters did something or will do something, or why the author wrote the story. On the test, HiSET, you will be asked, why did the author write the story? Now, to get us started, excuse me, authors have three purposes for writing a story or an article. Three main purposes, and they're right there: to entertain, to inform, or to persuade. Fiction stories are written to entertain you. Nonfiction stories or nonfiction articles will be written to either inform you or to persuade you. In fiction, you will be asked about character purpose, character motivation, and we'll talk about that more later. But why? When you're asked why did the author write this article? Was it to entertain, to inform, or to persuade? Persuasion is going to be opinion. Informative is going to be nothing but information, but facts. Right? And entertainment can be informative, but the main difference is fiction and nonfiction. Fiction is entertainment, to entertain. Nonfiction is to inform or to persuade. And back to this last slide. These are example questions for why. What is the purpose of the author including X in the article, including this? Like, why did the author do that? Why did the author write this? Why did the main character in the story do that? Use all of the example questions, the ones under why, where, when, what, and who, as guides to get started with active reading. Okay. Complete the assignments to practice this. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for participating, and I look forward to talking with you more in class.